size of the screen is.
Here we go. And okay, ready?
Yep.
Okay. We might be live.
Yeah, it's always hard to tell.
I'm just going to check on my Facebook on my phone. This is so exciting. Seth, I'm so glad you're here with me today. When I told people I was bringing you in live into the group, the excitement was amazing. And yes, we are live in the ADHD village. Hello, everybody. Welcome. I'm so glad that you're here. If it's the first time watching a live in the ADHD village, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Laura Dawn, the creator of the ADHD village. I'm so happy you're here. And with me today is Seth Perler.
Hi, everybody.
So glad that you're here. Let us know. I see some people saying hello. So as you hop on, say hello. Let us know where in the world you're coming from. So glad that you're here. Let us know. Seth, you're in Hawaii. I wore my
Yes.
Hawaiian necklace today just for you. My friend was in
All
Hawaii and
right.
he brought this back for me.
I see that there.
And I tried to do beach style hair because you're in
There you go.
Hawaii.
Mine is normally, I just got out of the shower, so but yeah, good.
So I'm
Hi,
I'm in
everybody.
Ontario. It's probably just as warm here though today as it is for you in Hawaii. How warm is it in Hawaii?
I couldn't even tell you. It's 10 a.m. and I haven't been outside yet.
Oh, and it's
I've
four
been
o'clock here
working
today.
all morning already. Yeah.
Okay, so we have hello. Oh, we've got Devrim is watching from Turkey. Welcome. And we
Welcome.
have
Awesome.
Desiree from Pennsylvania. Hello. I've got some warrior
Oh,
mamas watching. Hello, warrior mamas. Hello, Willa from South Africa. Oh, this is amazing. Jenny from Ontario. Melanie from Canada. Hi, Sophia. Sophia, you're from Los Angeles, I believe. Hello, hello. So glad you're here.
where are you looking? Are you looking in the Facebook comments?
Yes, on my
Okay.
phone.
I don't know. I'm trying to look at them live. Hi, everybody, by the way. And I only see from Sophia, Devrem, Desiree, and it doesn't show me the whole thing. Oh, that's too bad. Well, that's okay, actually. It's probably better because I'm going to close that tab and focus on us. So that way, there.
Okay.
Now I can look at the camera and you can
Okay.
tell me the questions because I can't do them really well.
So we
So,
are
hi, everybody.
when I said that Seth Perler was coming live into the group, there was a lot of excitement. People love you, Seth. So thank you so much for being
Good. I
here.
love people.
And Seth and I were talking about a month ago planning for this day, and we really wanted to talk about triggers because for many of us it's the beginning of summer vacation. We've got kids home from school. Some parents are working from home while their kids are at home. Some parents are trying to get their kids out to camp, and that can be a big transition. Transitioning from the school routine to summer routine is a big transition, which can be triggering for kids and for us. So lots going on. So maybe we can start. And there's lots of talk too in the ADHD village lately about being stressed, being overwhelmed. Moms are using words like, I'm exhausted. I can't take this anymore. I can't take all the arguing. So we've got parents who are just feeling like this, right? Like they're going to blow their lids. Their emotions are way up here. They're feeling really triggered. So maybe we could start just by asking everyone who's watching to type in the comments, what are your triggers? What sets you off?
Yeah. What's triggering you lately? What's pushing your buttons lately? Also, what's triggering your kids lately or pushing their buttons lately or your spouse lately or other people in your life? Like, what are you seeing that's triggering and how is that showing up? What do you mean when you say, it's triggering to somebody? what does that mean to you? So that what we want to do here is give you some insights and ideas that you can actually implement and use, that might be helpful. So that's what we want to try to do here. And I wanted to really use your comments and your thoughts to help drive that today. So I want to respond to these.
Okay, Desiree said, for my 9-year-old, hearing he can't have something or has to
Mm,
wait for something. The word no or not right now is very triggering for her child. Sophia, my patience is thin. It triggers me when my kids argue. Oh, I can relate to that. But even when they are playing together, they are rough. So she has two boys, and Sophia can't relax when they're rough together. I totally get that. I've got two boys too. um, Melanie, my triggers: negativity, arguments, loud noises,
mm,
continually needing to repeat myself.
mm.
I'm glad that you
Well,
mentioned the loud noises because there's lots of environmental things that are going on that can kind of throw off our balance. We have a body budget. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the term body budget. In the book I'm reading now by Mona de la Hook, The Brain Body Parenting, she talks about a body budget. And, when we're balanced, when we've had a good sleep and good nutrition and hydration and exercise and all the good things, and we're balanced, and then we have stressors, we're much more able to manage those stressors. But when we're not balanced, maybe there's too much loud noise coming in, we're overstimulated, maybe we're hungry, then it's much harder to deal with those stressors and it's more likely to become triggered. Um, Jenny said, setting up time boundaries for my 13-year-old triggers him. Oh, I can relate to that too, especially around video games. Like if you say you have only 1 hour to play the video game. Other 11 to 14-year-olds around here have little to no boundaries, so it feels unfair to him. Jenny, noises, interruptions. Melanie said her son's triggers are boredom. Desiree said, I get triggered when he impulsively swears or has a negative tone with disrespect.
so let's move into some questions around these then.
Okay,
So can if you have a question, can you post that? And I can't see them, but Laura
I'll
can.
read them.
And we'll pull up some questions around these. And sorry if you have to double type,
That's okay.
but to make sure that there's context to everybody in the question that you ask. And then what I'll do is I'll record these separately, on my end. But when there's a question that we can go, what I'll do, and we can both sort of bounce on that question. After hearing what everybody said so far, the good news is that there's a lot of overlap, I think, in the things that can be done about these things. So the things that I'll mention can be applicable in all kinds of different situations. So yeah, let me know when you got a question, and I'll hit
Okay.
record before you start.
And I think it's also really important to have that awareness of what triggers you and what triggers your kids. Like having that awareness is a first step so you can put that plan in action ahead of time. So just being aware is such a great first step. So let's get into the questions. Um,
Can I show
okay.
my summit real quick while you're getting them?
Oh yeah, yeah.
So I have a parenting summit coming up. It's called TFOS, the Executive Function Online Summit, at executivefunctionsummit.com. And I've been, probably a lot of you went last year if you're already familiar with me. But this is the new site. I've been working on it a lot. So if it looks different than last time you saw it, it is. I am getting 30 experts this year, and I have, I believe, 29, including you, awesomely. And this is it. You just go sign up on any of these blue buttons, and it's free. And you can buy the all access pass if you want, which is awesome. But yeah, it's good stuff.
And I'm going to
It's a
pop
great event.
the link right into the
Oh,
chat.
yeah. Good idea.
Yeah, I'll get to that in a second. But yeah, so if you want to register now, that would be great. And if you know Seth Perler, you know he produces like high quality, and I am super honored, Seth, to be included this year. So thank you. Okay, let's get to the
It's so good.
questions.
All right.
Um, okay, Desiree said, I don't know how to calm myself down to allow for his impulsive moment to pass and then de escalate him.
Okay, I may ask you to read that again. One of our speakers actually was just talking about they have a take five rule, which was really cool. Um, but the one way to calm yourself down, this take five rule, what they did is they had five. They would say to their child, "Okay, hey, I need to take five," and they would do it in front of their child so that they're modeling it for them. They're not telling their kid what to do, but they're modeling how they're regulating themselves, and they would say, okay, five, I'm going to count to 10. One, two, three. Okay, five, I'm going to see what is the third letter of the alphabet, A, B, C. Okay, five, I'm going to look for three blue things in the room. Okay. And they would sort of do more or less sensory things, but things that really engage this part of the brain. So essentially, when we are escalated and we need to de-escalate, or when we're triggered, which is the same thing as being escalated, or when we're dysregulated, all of these words, and it's so cool that so many of the different experts that I've gotten to talk to, I'm sure you too, Laura, have different ways of saying the same thing. So in a way, it's not rocket science, but we can sort of get pigeonholed by listening to one person or one experts say this is the way it is. Well, there are many ways to say your nervous system is dysregulated. You're in fight, flight, or freeze. You're escalated. You've been triggered. Your buttons are being pushed. So, but essentially, what happens when we are feeling escalated or triggered is that our nervous system is sensing that we are not safe and we are being threatened. Even though we're not, it's not like there's a lion running at us. The thing that feels unsafe in this case is the interaction with your child. And the question is great, how do you de-escalate yourself? And I love that you're asking that question, because I think that that's the right question to ask. Is putting it on, if there's fault, let it be mine, and putting it on oneself first, and saying, okay, what do I need to do to de-escalate? I've been triggered. So I think that for me, there are two ways to look at this. One is proactively and one is reactively. In terms of de-escalating reactively, that would mean in the moment while it's going on, what can you do? And proactively would mean when it's not that moment and it's a different time, are there things that you can do? So let's look at reactively first. You're in the moment, I love this model. So on a scale of 1 to 10, from this being cool to this being hot. Hot is the angriest you've ever been, or saddest you've ever been. It's the most intense emotion you've ever felt in your life is the 10. And the 1 is calm and cool. You're totally relaxed. You're just enjoying yourself. You're just having an awesome, relaxing day. And so on that scale, once we hit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay, that's sort of the midline, and then 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Once we pass 6, once we're in 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10, it's really hard to get back into that blue zone. It's so if we can catch it before, and that's kind of what you said, Laura, earlier, knowing what our triggers are and naming them, just naming them, can help us to de-escalate a little bit. But how can we get back into that blue zone once we've crossed that line? And then how far are we into the line? So one thing we can do is sort of in our own mind or out loud say, okay, I'm at like a 7 right now, or I'm at like a 10 right now, and just state it to ourselves or to our kid and say, and then putting it on ourselves. I feel really whatever. So just to name it. So to our child. And we don't want to be like, you're making me. You're making me is something that many of us have grown up with, and I certainly learned like that sort of victim mentality. I'm going to blame everybody else.
You're driving
You're
me
making me angry. You're
crazy.
making me mad. You're driving me crazy. But I'm feeling, and it's really good to identify it in the body, but you can say, I'm feeling really frustrated right now. I'm feeling really angry right now. I'm feeling tension in my muscles in my body. And literally, you can say this to your child because when we say we feel angry or we feel frustrated, like that's sort of an umbrella term. But what's happening is that we're having physiological responses in our body. So when we say, oh, okay, I'm frustrated right now, what does that mean? Does that mean my stomach's tight? Does that mean my fists are clenched? Does that mean that I'm sweating? Does that mean that my hands are sweating? Does that mean that I'm rigid? Does that mean that I have an energy that I want to just run out of here? Like, what do we feel? So, to learn to, and it's not easy to get this vocabulary if you haven't had it. This is something that I've learned over years in my own life. So it's not just overnight, but to start to articulate, okay, I'm feeling really angry. My body is feeling warm. I'm feeling really tense right now, and I need to cool down. So just to articulate to your child, and then you can say, I'm going to take 5, or I'm going to take a minute, or I'm going to cool off for a second. So to articulate what's going on and then model what you're going to do is one way to do it. And then also, when we notice and articulate it, that let's say you're at a 10, that's going to drop it down to, let's say, a 9 right there, or at least a little bit. And then it's really hard in the moment to think, though, because what happens is that the prefrontal cortex, the front part of our brain, the part of our brain that does the executive function, but also does decision making. And can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, I'm
Oh,
doing.
just
Do you know Dan Siegel's model?
oh, the brain one. Yeah,
So
yeah.
for those of you who don't know, this is like the emotional limbic part of the brain.
The
It,
amygdala. Yeah.
it's
Or
also called like the red brain, where all the emotions are. This is the your prefrontal cortex, where your executive functioning skills, your rational decision making, your problem solving. So when you get into that 7, 8, 9 zone, you flip your lid, you're dealing with the emotional part. So sorry to
yeah.
just as you were speaking, I was just thinking of this. This is a good
No, that's
reminder.
great. Think of it that way. Yeah, that's the one that's in charge. So that emotional brain, that amygdala, your fight, flight, or freeze response, your adrenaline, that's what's in charge of that time. And we need to get this back online and this back in charge. So how are we going to do that? So one of the best things to do is the breathing, is to say, I'm going to breathe 3 times or 5 times. It doesn't matter, but in belly breath more than chest breath. The chest breath is very anxious. If you ever see someone who's always breathing like this, you can probably look at me right now and know if I'm breathing like that, it looks anxious. You know, but belly breathing, you want to breathe into the belly. Just 3 long, slow breaths, and it may be really hard when you're activated and in that kind of a mode to do that. But trust me, trying to do that is going to down regulate you a little bit.
And I just
And
want to
then we're
mention
so
too,
in the story. What's that?
I was going to mention about the breathing to make, if you can make your exhale longer than your
Mm,
inhale, because
thank
if you
you.
think about it, when you're in a panic, you, right, that intake of air. But what do you do when you're relaxed? Like a sigh of relief.
Ah, in
So when
fact,
you're
that's
doing
the.
your belly breathing, really try to push that exhale out longer.
I'm glad you said that because that's my favorite, easiest exercise ever. Is just do 3 ahs. So go because you're going to automatically have the longer exhale and so on and so forth. But even if you don't feel like saying but really to use this sort of technique to really breathe and down regulate yourself. And then we're so engaged in the narrative and the story. So now we start to, that means that the story is, I'm not safe, that I'm feeling threatened, and that's what a trigger is. We're feeling threatened. Our button's been pushed because something's not going how we think it's supposed to. So then it goes. Then I think about the proactive. What can we do proactively? And what we can do is look at those 2 things. Look at the narratives in the story that we have in our mind, and look at the body and how we respond to that stuff, and do things proactively at another time. For example, practicing some meditations you can find on YouTube or in any number of books or what have you, and practicing the latest research says that 13 minutes is like the actual research based, and one of our speakers, Nicole Tutro, is talking about this, but one of the actual research based things that they found out about meditation that actually starts to change the brain. But you don't need to worry about that. Just do something proactively, even a minute of just some peace and quiet every day. And then noticing the body, but also noticing the narrative in the story when you're not in it, and maybe journaling or talking to someone about it and saying, what is my narrative and my story at that moment when I feel triggered? What is the story? And the story isn't the story. I always say the story isn't the story. And that's with your kids and with you and with me. The story isn't the story. So the story is they're not doing this and we need to get out the door, or we need to get moving on with dinner, or we have a million things to do. But that's not really the story. The story is behind that. They're not doing this. We're not going to be able to eat dinner. Um, we're going to be really stressed. We have a million other things to do, blah, blah, blah. It's like 17 little stories behind it.
Mhm.
And usually it all ends with at the very end of it. And sorry to sound dreary, but the amygdala does this, and we're going to die. And that's it. So, and the reason I say this is I've done so much journaling and looking at like things that have triggered me, and work with so many kids that like when we really, I do a why exercise sometimes, but when we go back and back and back, it really comes back to that primal fear that we're really, our well-being is at risk. And when we can look at the story in a different way and say, okay, that's my story when I'm in that moment. What do I want my story to be? And when we're not triggered and we're in a regulated time, if we can journal or think or talk with someone and come to, what do I want my narrative to be at that time? Doesn't mean it's automatically going to pop in, but as we practice those things, it's going to come more and more quickly. It's about frequency and intensity. How frequently are we triggered, and how intense is the triggering? And that frequency will become less, and that triggering will become less. So then we have the whole, well, what about our kids and their triggers too? And the same type of thing. There's in the moment, what can we do to co regulate? Like if we say, calm down, like that isn't going to get someone calm. But if we're like, wow, I notice you look frustrated, I really want to take a breath myself because it looks really intense, really hard for you. Like if we're using vocabulary around, I notice, um, and so in the moment, how can we model and regulate with them, but then proactively when we're with them. And it's okay even if they're angsty teenagers and they hardly even talk to you right now. It's because I know a lot of parents go through times like that. But to say, hey, I need to talk. You're not in trouble. Let's sit down. Look, when these things happen, what's your narrative and story? What's going on in your head? What can I do? And to talk proactively about the narrative. And I notice when you get really frustrated, you get really grip. Your voice goes up. To help just talk about it. And it's the marathon. It's not the overnight fix. Anyhow, that's my response to that.
I want to go back to something that you said that I think was such a really important point. And you said in the moment, like that modeling where you're naming how you're feeling and then you're connecting to the body and how your body feels. That is such a huge thing that you can do for your kids. I'm in a course right now, self-regulation course with Dr. Stuart Shanker. And he said
I
that
love
50,
I
I love
love
him too.
Stuart
Oh my
Shanker.
goodness. I like every word he says. I've got tears in my eyes. I'm just so excited about what he's talking about. But he said that 50% of our kids right now, kids and teens, are stressed. And the reason why they're so stressed is because they don't know how to handle their emotions. They're either suppressing them, avoiding them, or trying to distract themselves. They don't know how to handle them. So the way they can learn how to handle their emotions is from their parents. So if you are able to label your emotions and say what it feels like for you, that's going to be role modeling and teaching them so that they can start recognizing what's going on in their own body. So that's such a hugely important thing to do for your kids.
Yeah. And for those of you that are like, what do you mean what's going on in your bodies still? Like, again, it took me years to really notice because even when I was and you were growing up, like it was pretty easy to check out. But now kids can be distracted 24/7. 24/7 there's static and noise and they cannot really have to feel things. We at least partially had to, got to, I should say. But yeah, there's really a lot of opportunity for them to not deal with it, to distract, and but
I have a
we
question
want
from
them.
Alicia.
Yeah, let me pause this or stop this, and then
Yeah.
I'm gonna start it again. Okay, go for it.
And keep the questions coming in and the comments coming in, everybody. This is fabulous. So Alicia wants to know how to coach her teen to make a decision to do the right thing rather than doing the easier thing. So sometimes doing the thing that's kind of the right thing as a parent, you know, it's the right thing to do, but it might be boring or it might be hard, and your teen wants the easy way out. And as Alicia was typing this, I was thinking about a discussion I had with my teenager about summer school. And I said, what a great idea summer school is, because you could do one course in the summer, just focus on that one course, and then you can lighten your load for the rest of like for the next term. And he said, no way. And I mean, there's pros and cons to both, but um, as parents, we often, are able to zoom out and see the bigger picture. And we want our teens to listen to our advice. And we can get really triggered when they're not listening and they're taking the easier way out. So, what would you still suggest for Alicia?
Okay, I'm taking notes here on a document, by the way, so I can kind of, because I have so many thoughts and I just want to be a little more structured in how I respond. Okay, so first of all, when I talk about executive function, there's so many definitions of executive function out there, and there's so many that I've come up with myself, so many different ways. But one of the ways I like to describe executive function, it is doing the important thing over the easier, preferred, more fun thing when it matters. Of course, we want to do easier, more preferred, more fun things. But executive function is about when it matters and we have to do the more responsible thing because it's in our own future interest of our own future well-being. But the brain, especially with executive function challenges, it doesn't have good future thinking. So it's really hard for people like me with executive function challenges to connect especially as a young person, to connect the dots to say, okay, if I do this, then this is the consequence. And that's good or bad. If this will produce a good consequence. And people who are highly motivated, who don't have executive function challenges, who execute really well, like they can really see, oh, I have a goal and I do these things. And they're able to like put aside the resistance and just be like, and they have this, what I think is a weird thing, that they feel really good when things are checked off their list. Me and the kids I work with, we don't really care if it's checked off our list, it's just checked off our list. So it's hard for us to sort of have like a sensation, oh, that feels like such a relief. A lot of us don't. But for people who are highly motivated, they do. They feel really good about getting things done. So for a kiddo like this, where, how do you, and I like the framing of the question, how do I coach my child?
Mhm.
That's a really great frame, because what that implies is that it implies collaboration. It implies not top down, but side by side. We are equals. I'm your parent, but I'm not top down telling you what to do, and you're your own person, and I want to guide you. I want to collaborate with you to help you come up with your own answers. I don't want to give you advice. I want to tell you my experience and what I think, but only when there's buy-in and ownership and you're open to it. So that sort of coaching approach, and Yulia Rafaelova talks about parenting like a coach. But that sort of approach also allows the parent to have more flexibility in their own thinking. So me as a coach, if I'm talking with a kid, I can know that they can make the wrong decision or a bad decision and know that they can learn from it. I can see that it's going to happen and not have that sense of need to control, but let them do that. And for the parent, I think it's really hard to watch that happen. But oftentimes, obviously, I'm not talking about things that are direct threats to people. But I'm talking about when it's okay for them to fail, for things to not work out, to let that happen, but let it be their failure. And I use failure loosely. I'm not going to get into that discussion, but let them own that, but follow up with it and being like, wow, I took notes that day and you told me blah, 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 that you were going to do this, and then this is what happened. What was that like? How did that happen? What would you do differently? So that's like being like a coach. Now I know you might be going, oh my gosh, watching them do this. And you're like, but what's that old quote? Don't let them see you sweat. don't don't necessarily let them see all that, but really saying, I'll tell you something my grandma used to say to me that really, I don't know how she did this, but she would say, okay, I know you're going to do the right thing. And I'd be like, oh, really? So whereas my parents would be like, do this, my grandma was like, okay, I know you're going to do the right thing. And that was like a coach, like, because then that was on me, and it really made me think more about that. So, and the other thing about doing the easy, preferred, more fun thing over the hard, more important thing in the moment, I think for us parents really is to look at also the validity of the hard thing. So, sometimes parents, you're gonna look at what the thing is, and you might want to, and some parents do and some don't. I mean, I've worked with probably thousands of parents by this time, but a lot of parents, they say, okay, this is a homework that needs to be done, so it needs to be done. Well, and some parents are like, okay, wait, is this even valid? But you need to really look at, is this even valid? And if your child has 3 or 4 hours of homework a night, that's not okay. And you should go to the teachers, even if it's high school, and be like, hey, this isn't working. And the admin and the counselors, and be like, we need something. How can my kid do the homework so that they're showing what they're learning? But my kid struggles with processing and attention, and it's going to take them forever. And they have to have a balanced life. They have to have family time. They have to have that time for them, friend time, and I'm not okay with it. So sometimes you really have to advocate hard to say that. So sometimes the hard thing isn't valid. Now, assuming it is valid, now I'm finally getting to your question. How do you coach them to do the hard thing? Sorry it took me so long, but I like
This
to
is
give
great.
background to stuff because I think context is important. The way that I get kids, because this is my job, how do I get kids with executive function challenges? And if you follow me for any length of time, and resistance is the problem, how do you get them to do the thing? So people say, how do I motivate my kid? And I always say, it's not about motivation. I don't talk about that with my kids. It's how, and even my kids, I say to them, I don't want to motivate you. The question is, how do you do the thing you need to do, even if you're not motivated? How do I do my taxes, even if I'm not
Mhm.
motivated? Well, the way that I do that, or the way that I get a student to do these things, is there are many ways, but is essentially one, the relationship, the safety, the nervous system, that there's that rapport. And sometimes in families, there has to be a lot of healing that takes place and repair and unlearning patterns that we've learned as kids and changing defaults that we have. So, thus creating more safety in the nervous system of both of you. Then the other thing is chunking. So when I'm and with the relationship, I'm implying the buy-in and ownership. So if I'm going to work with a kid who's like, Seth, I do not want to write this paper. This teacher hates me. I can't stand this class. I don't like this subject, and I hate writing, and I'm bad at writing. If they have all those narratives in their mind, let's say, how am I going to get them to make progress? Because I do. How do I do that? So first is that relationship, and then getting the buy-in and ownership. So let's say in this case, the buy-in and ownership, I might be like, cool, I hear you. Tell me more. So I want to hear. I want to hold space. Tell me more. Tell me more. Explain that to me. I'm not going to say, oh, your teacher doesn't hate you. I'm going to say, tell me more. Tell me more. I'm going to hold space and just listen. Once they feel safe, they're more in their prefrontal cortex, they're not so angered by the situation, then I can start. And this takes time. So this is not an overnight thing for people who are looking for a quick fix. That is not what I do. That's not what any of the people in the summit do. That's not what Laura does, because it doesn't work. It might work in the short term, but we want some real buy-in and ownership. And then I'm like, well, and what do you want to do after high school? And they're like, oh, I don't even know, or whatever they say. Now, sometimes kids will say, I don't even know what I want to do after high school. And my response to that is, well, tell me if I'm wrong here, but I'm pretty sure you at least want to be happy and successful and have freedom and choices to do what you want, live what you probably don't want a job that you hate, and to feel like you know. Now that's really hard for them to contemplate because they haven't experienced that part of life yet. But I try to articulate it in a way that I can at least get them to have some ownership. Then I can start saying, okay, cool. Look, can I show you a way to like just can we just get moving on this, and I promise you I will make it easier for you. I promise. And then what I'm going to do is do scaffolding and chunking. Same thing essentially. Here's what chunking is, parents. When something feels, and this is for you as well, the listener, when something feels too big and too abstract, even if you have exceptional executive function, we feel this pressure and resistance when it feels too big and too abstract. And what people with good executive function do is they say, oh, this feels stressful. I need to make sense of this. I need to create systems. I need to figure out how to get through this. I need to chunk it down. And what people without executive function do is we just say, we want to forget it's even there. And, and but I teach kids how to chunk. There are two ways to chunk. And I'm giving you sort of a bird's eye view, but you will be able to apply this to your situation. There are two ways to chunk. You chunk by time and by task. Now, this is what Seth says. Other people can describe it differently, but scaffolding, but chunking, do it by time and by task. What does that mean? Time would mean I'm going to do something for a period of time. Like, for example, I'm trying to do 90 days of fitness right now. So that's a big chunk. That's a long time, 90 days. But my chunk for each success for me is 20 minutes. So I'm giving myself the freedom that if I at least do 20 minutes of fitness, I'm counting that as a win. Okay? Because if I say an hour of fitness for 90 days, I am setting myself up for failure. Absolutely. But I can do 20 minutes. So I've chunked it. So it was big and abstract, right? And it was super heavy, too much, 90 days, But how can I chunk it? Time by task. So that's a way by doing it by time. Now, and then let's use an example with time with writing an essay or doing math homework. Okay, math homework, time, 1 minute, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 30 minutes. Okay, that's chunking by time. Writing the essay, same thing, a minute, 5 minutes, 10. Can we just start? And then task. Okay, the outline, the first paragraph, the thesis statement, chunking it into these different pieces, really helping kids see that there are pieces and you can manage and accomplish one piece at a time and get this thing done. Now, what they know is they're totally unrealistic. They may not say that, but they know that they think it's going to take an hour and it's really a 10-hour paper. And they don't have that down yet. So helping them learn to chunk by time and by task is what I do. I chunk it down small enough that they can say, okay, I can do that, Seth. And I'll give you one more example. So I have this silly story that I tell like this, but it's like, hey, can you write that paper? No. Okay. Can you write a page? No. Can you write a paragraph? No. Can you write a sentence? No. Okay. Can you write a word? No. Can you write a letter? No. Can you write a dot? Yes. Let's start there. And you have to find for each kid where that there is because it's different. But that's how you're going to move them forward with ownership and buy-in. And you also have to be aware of when you start to see their nervous system escalate and the frustration, even if it's after 3 minutes, you have to help them notice it and let them have a breather instead of continuing to push. Oh, you got to get this done. Let's do it due tomorrow. Sometimes in the greater interest of things, it's more important to let it go, let them turn in something that's, a tenth done, and be like, I'm so proud of you for that. And I do that a lot too. I notice everything they do, quote, right, but I will be like, okay, you're done. We're done. You wrote one paragraph out of 5 you're supposed to write. We're done. We're going to turn it in tomorrow. And I'm so proud of you. You didn't want to do anything, and you just did an entire paragraph. Look how many sentences you wrote. We just spent 42 minutes on this, and that's amazing. Like, that's good. Like, I want them to walk out of there noticing that for them, they did stretch and push themselves, and that is valuable. So it just may not be under the metric of what was expected. So I don't even remember the question at this point. I think it was the high schooler, how to get them to do the hard thing over the other things when it matters.
Yeah.
And I think that is the key. The relationship with the buy-in and the ownership, and then the chunking, which is basically scaffolding. You can look that up later, but chunking by time by task so that it's not so abstract and it's concrete and they can say, okay, I can do that. So that's how I coach them to get moving and get momentum. And what you'll see in weeks or months is them starting to have this as a coach, parent coach. You will start to see them having their own skills of being able to say, oh, how should I chunk this one? And that's what you want. You want them independently saying, how can I don't want to do this, but my narrative is that this is what I need to do. I do not want to do this, but let's get it done. And how can I chunk it? That's where we want to get.
Seth, while you were talking, I was writing some notes down and I got 5 C's out of that. So your first thing was like calm their nervous system down. Like that's the first step.
I should write this down. You're so good at that.
Well, I was really like listening to these key things. I was like, yes. So calm their nervous system down. You can't go anywhere. So if their lid is flipped, nothing's going to happen. So number one is calm the nervous system. Number two is connection. And you described that really beautifully by the listening and holding space. And then when the kids sometimes they're not able to really express themselves, you use the statements like, well, like I can imagine that you would want to feel happy. And like
I
I,
notice.
I call those like I imagine statements. So, and when you're doing that, when you're listening to a child and connecting with them, you're actually helping calm their nervous system down, because when that happens, you are helping them to release oxytocin into their bloodstream, which blocks cortisol, that blocks the stress. So that is actually a hugely important thing, that connection and listening. So calm, connection, and then there was a collaboration with the child, right? We're not telling them what to do. We're working with them, collaborating. It's not that I'm the boss and I'm telling you, we're working side by side together. Chunking, so breaking things into the smaller tasks, and then celebrating. I was so glad you got to that at the
Mm.
end. The celebration piece is so important because, again, when you celebrate with a child, um, your energy is matching their energy is going to feed off of your energy. And that celebration, again, is going to boost their oxytocin. It also boosts their dopamine and their serotonin. So celebration is really important. And when you boost up that dopamine, that helps to motivate them to do more of the same task again. So really important. So 5 C's, Seth: calm, connection, collaborate, chunk, and celebrate. Ready for the next
Perfect.
question?
I am ready.
You're brilliant. Okay, so this is from Sophia. I'm wondering what I can do when they are arguing, or there is a conflict, or even when they are playing rough. I feel like I'm just yelling and not being heard.
I'm taking note again. Okay, cool. What to do when they're arguing? Okay, so I'm going to talk about the proactive and reactive again, but I'm going to start here this time with the proactive. So this is really hard because when they're yelling and there's conflict and they're arguing, and when kids can really, me and my brother, we hurt each other. We physically hurt each other, and that's not okay. And so the proactive really is sitting down with everybody. Who I don't know if this is a one parent family or a 2 parent family, and then if it is a 2 parent family, getting the buy-in from both parents to really have a sit down. But this deserves a sit down because and if it is a 1 parent family, if you can get a relative or mentor or a grandparent or somebody involved to sit down, because you really need sort of that strength, I think, in like a conversation like this. But this is important, and it's something that's not going to change overnight, but you got to start changing the direction, because as the kids get bigger, it can get more dangerous or not. Me and my brother really became best friends when I was 13 and he was 10. And, but either way, we want to err on the side of caution and really be proactive about this. So to me, that really does require a sit down or multiple sit downs, but starting with a sit down and saying we need to have a serious talk, and turning off the phones and everything, all the electronics, and really being present for each other, and saying, look, when the goal of this talk is to really not argue so much and not have so much conflict. Nobody likes it. Nobody's winning with it. Nobody feels good about it. And I don't know what to do. What ideas do you guys have? So getting some buy-in, and you may know what to do. Depends on the age of your kids, and you may know what values you hold, that you want to guide your kids towards. But still bring it out of them. So like when I was a school teacher for 12 years, and I would have the kids make the class rules every year. I knew what I wanted them to be. I knew what I needed it in the classroom, but I knew that they needed it to be theirs. So I would guide the conversation, and we might articulate it different, but I knew essentially what I needed in that classroom. And the same thing, you might know what you need, but like get it from them. And you can use a talking stick or something to set the tone where people, or timer and a talking stick, but people can't be interrupted, and you really hear people. And when somebody says something in that conversation that's mean, you don't interrupt them at that moment. You actually probably want to do the opposite, and say, tell us more. Why do you say that? That's an interesting comment, obviously, unless it's dangerous in the moment. But our inclinations say, don't say that. That's disrespectful. But in this time, say you're allowed to speak freely right now. Keep talking. We just want to understand, and really hearing everybody. So this is about security, secure attachment, secure relationship, so that people feel heard and seen and understood. So really starting with a real sit down, looking for what can we do for solutions, and see what everybody has and come up with a strategy to try. It's not written in stone, but y'all are going to try it for a week or a month or whatever you're going to do. You're going to really try it. Now, the first day, that very day, they're probably going to try it and it's not going to work. Just expect that. In fact, call it out in the conversation. Say, realistically, this isn't going to change tomorrow. So if this happens, which, what do we do if we're in the thick of it? And talking about that now. So that's more of the proactive, is like really trying to get some strategies and in place, but getting the buy-in and the ownership. Now that also, obviously, proactively, you can do things like the breath work and things like this. But when people are in conflict, when the kids are yelling at each other and they're having conflict, they are feeling, like I said before, unsafe and threatened. They're not getting what they want, whatever it is, but to them, their body feels unsafe. So also proactively helping them understand what we talked about before, that and we don't have good body vocabulary, helping them understand that your body is having an experience. And that can help depersonalize it in a good way. Like if I say, oh my God, I am so stupid, Laura, I forgot, blah, blah, blah. Or if I said, oh my gosh, Laura, my brain is so forgetful, I forgot, blah, blah. Those are two very different things. I'm so stupid is very inner criticky and very inner shaming, but my brain, blah blah blah, is more playful and more objective. So to depersonalize things, when they start learning, my body is getting tense, I'm noticing I'm getting triggered by this, I'm noticing I'm going from red to blue to red when this happens with my sibling or whatever. So giving them language around that. Again, I'm trying to talk really fast, and I'm there's so much to this stuff, but for lack of a better whatever, that you want to have those sorts of conversations proactively about helping them notice what's going on in their narrative in their body as well. And then I wanted to mention, when you're saying that you're always yelling, there's no shame in that. First of all, I want to say that you're not the only one. I'm so glad you said that, because I think there's so much shame in the parent world, where you go pick up your kids after school, everybody looks so perfect when they're in the school parking lot picking up their kids. But that, and parents I've known a lot, they can be so hard on themselves, but they can really feel like they're the only one. You're not. There's no shame in the yelling, and I'm so glad that you said that, because I know other people in the comments are do that, yell as well, and don't want to be yelling. But have you ever seen when somebody's dog is barking like crazy, and then the person's yelling at the dog, "Stop barking!" And the dog doesn't hear the words, but the dog doesn't stop barking usually, because the dog is hearing, oh, my owner is dysregulated, I should continue to be dysregulated. So when we're yelling at them, imagine that there are no words in the yelling. Imagine it was just loud yelling with no words. Ah, ah, ah. What they're seeing is, oh, my caretaker is anxious. We are not safe. I I was pretty sure we weren't safe. That's why I was fighting with my sibling. But now I'm really sure we're not safe. Oh, and so we speak nervous system to nervous system all the time, and the yelling isn't going to go away tomorrow. But again, frequency and intensity. How can we make it less and less intense, less frequent, and then what can we do instead? So But again, you have to be proactive to sort of figure out your game plan. But in the time when you're yelling, to remember the thing is going to be hard. But how can you create a reminder for yourself? A rubber band on your wrist, a note, a sign, a sticky note, a thing on your phone. For if it's always after school, to set it for when you get home, that the reminder goes off to get yourself centered and regulated. Um, because the conflict's going to start with the kiddos soon, and to think and to maybe have reminders of um, to for whatever you're going to say in the moment, but to say, okay, stop, or whatever you, let's say you're to interfere and be like stop, or you're to turn the lights out, or um, you were to do something really weird, like start laughing like crazy and do a pattern interrupt of some sort, and be like, and they're like, what? We're trying to argue and she's laughing. What is going on? I don't know, but just think about how different ways that you can pop into this situation and not do the nervous system yelling, because they're not going to hear the words that you're saying. They'll hear the words, but the logic and reason that you're trying to convey is not going to get through at that time. And then as far as the not being heard, I think that's usually not so much it is in the moment, but it's really taking time, creating space, honoring space every day to have everybody be heard, whether that's at the dinner table or individual time with everybody, but really building into your routine and your traditions and your family time, building into the routines time for people to be heard. Again, whether it's one on one or everybody as a family about things, really building in time and routines for everybody to feel heard. It doesn't mean everybody agrees, and you feeling heard doesn't mean you agree. It just means you feel heard. But that's what we want. We want to feel heard. It's so simple, but it's also so hard. But that's what we all desire. That's called secure attachment, secure relating. We all want to feel heard and seen and noticed and understood, and like somebody's got our back. That's what it's about. So, yeah, I can't hear you.
Sorry, lots of great proactive suggestions there. And I really love that idea about having that time to connect with your family members, whether it's together or one on one, having that connection time where you have a chance to be seen and heard. And you could even, do that with your spouse, set aside 5 minutes every day where you're going to talk and listen to each other. I love the planning in advance. So that your kids, do these behaviors in a calm moment. Think about, how do you want to respond in that moment? And I love the idea of the pattern and interrupt with laughing or whatever it is, but think about how you want to to respond, and practice that response. Practice it by saying it out loud or whatever. So when that moment happens, it's easier for you to actually do it in the moment. And then at the beginning, Seth, you were talking about having that family meeting, and it really sounded like Ross Greene's plan B with collaborative problem solving. So that first statement is like, I'm noticing there's a lot of fighting and arguing, and this isn't okay. And then inviting the kids in, like, what's up with that? How do you feel about this? What are your thoughts? So bringing them in, having them collaborate. And again, you talked about that importance of really listening, letting them express their feelings, and maybe they might say something that we don't like, that we might normally say, don't talk to me that way, but instead we're going to let them speak their mind and say, tell me more. That tell me more is I like that
Mm,
phrase. Thank you for
I do
sharing
too.
that.
Yeah.
Mhm. So I think that was a beautiful answer to Sophia's questions, and worth almost watching this again to really to absorb it all. Thank you, Seth.
And I'll post them separately on YouTube as separate questions. Let's do one more.
Okay. And yeah, I am trying to be mindful. Oh my, time is flying.
That's why I talk
Um,
fast. I'm so verbose, but I feel like, again, context is always so important. And I
yeah.
don't know the people in the situation. So I'm
And
trying to.
and even if you're not answering everybody's questions, I'm sure there's so much that we can all relate to and apply it to our own question. And I'll go into the group later too and see if I can help answer some of the questions later as well.
Yeah. How many people are on?
There's 19 people watching right
All
now.
right. Good. Glad to
Yay.
have you.
Thanks everybody for being here. I'm celebrating you all actually for being here and for taking this time. Like, this is really important. That you're committing to your kids, to your family, that you're here because you want to do better. So thank you so much. Um, I feel very honored that you're sharing the space and time with Seth and I right now. And if you love this conversation, I know you're going to love Seth's summit that's coming
Ah,
up in
say that again.
August.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And please share the site with people too. Please help get the word out if you would be willing to.
And that
What's
that's so key, getting the word out, because I think the more adults that understand this, the better. Like these are, the teachers, the neighbors, the coaches, like everybody in your kids' lives, like we want them to understand. Okay, last question. This is from Melanie. My son often gets angry and kicks holes in walls or punches holes in walls. When he gets angry and looks like he might do this, I react. How can I quickly de escalate the situation so I don't have holes everywhere?
Yeah, I mean, this is Tasha Shore is so good with boys with aggression. And it's a really how old we don't know how old the child is.
I think he's around 10-ish, let's say.
This this is really just something to really take seriously. What I've seen is sometimes kids with aggression, when they become teenagers and they get bigger than the parent, they can be threatening and violent with the parents. And it's a really tough situation. It's really tough. Like your kiddos clearly suffering. They're so uncomfortable. They feel so threatened and so unsafe that their nervous system feels so attacked that they're kicking the wall, and they're just desperate for connection, for a calm nervous system to feel calm in their body. I guess part of what this makes me think of, and I'm thinking more in terms of executive function first, but when I talk about executive function and people ask about medication, I used to be anti-meds years ago, and then I saw that medications. And I've seen kids get on meds, and it completely didn't work for them. But I've also seen it completely change their lives for the better. And so, um, I'm definitely not anti-med. But what if I had a magic wand? Before I'd use medication, I'd want to see what sort of the baseline of executive function is. And the only way that we're going to see that is through seeing if they actually had real restful sleep, the exercise and movement that they need, and the nutrition that they need. Actual food that actually nourishes the body, not just processed food all the time. And maybe even looking at Feingold diet, which is an interesting one, or elimination diets, to really see, because there's evidence, there's scientific evidence that shows about these things, but actually getting food that's nourished. So anyhow, the sleep, nutrition, exercise, once that's in place, now I should also add trauma. If there's past trauma, whether we know about it or not, it could be, there's what's called big T and little t trauma. Big T trauma would be like somebody was in a war zone, or um, their house burnt down. Those are gigantic traumas that somebody experiences. A sudden death of somebody. Those are big T. Little T trauma, or being mugged. Those are big traumas. Little T traumas are can be more like ongoing shame, or ridicule, or like somebody bullying them, like just making fun of them day after day after day. Like those things can really be traumatic too. So anyhow, looking at sleep, nutrition, and working with the trauma stuff, to me would be, if I had a magic wand, I'd want to address this first. So with this kiddo, I'd want to see if those things were really worked with, or I'd want to be evaluating those to see where they're at. And then if we knew, those things are really good, then it's like, well, what's going on with this kiddo's nervous system? And either way, I mean, this is a situation to take seriously and get help. There are people out there that devote their lives to helping people with dysregulated nervous systems, through counselors, therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists. There are so many people out there that do such great work around these things, but this is not something to just look for quick tips on, but to like really dive into and figure out what is happening to this kiddo's nervous system. Now, to be more concrete with you, when you're in the moment, then you have to do what you have to do to get everybody safe in the moment. And I guess if I was seeing that in the moment, my first objective would probably be getting everybody in I'm imagining if this was happening in a school, like get everybody around in the hallway or the classroom safe, and then really probably redirecting them, meaning trying to um, get them not I wouldn't want to try to engage with logic and reason in terms of what's going on with the situation and why you shouldn't be kicking the walls, because it's not being heard. The amygdala is already triggered and the prefrontal cortex is offline, so you got to get that prefrontal cortex back. But really using soothing voice, trying redirection, trying humor, um, and something to redirect to get it to stop and to get them to de-escalate, and then to dive into the what's going on, how can the attachment stuff, what do they need to feel seen and heard and understood and known and like you've got their back. What do they need? And this kid has a lot of needs. You know, they really are not feeling safe if they're doing this. Even though they are safe, they don't feel it. So how then it's in the proactive, it's like, okay, talking to that kiddo when everybody's regulated, hey, we need to have a talk. When you're feeling like this, what's happening beforehand? How can you notice? Tell me about what you were thinking before this happened. And then if this happens, is there something you can do besides kick your foot through the wall? Can we give you something to kick? Can we give you something to throw at the wall? Can we give you a better wall to throw something at? Maybe we can give you a ball to throw at a cement wall. You know, is there a way we can get this energy out? You know, this is your house and this is our house, you know, and we want this house to be a really great, safe place for you. Is there a way that you can get that energy out, that and see what so I don't know if this is the best answer to the question, but that's what I got for you. And my brain's fried after an hour, but
Yeah, I really like that idea of in the moment remembering that your child is in the red brain and the limbic brain, so the rationally being rational and reasonable won't work. And back to what you had said previously in the previous situation is when there is calm, that's when you can have that collaborative problem solving conversation and see if you can come up with some alternate ideas, because yes, this little guy has energy that he needs to get out and that's the way he wants to get it out, but how can we do it safely and so that things aren't being damaged, and see what he comes up with. Maybe it's a punching bag or a designated punching pillow or whatever it is. And Seth, you were explaining too in that moment, just to if you can keep your calm as much as possible to help regulate the nervous system, because in that moment the child is feeling really unsafe. And that's the important piece, right? What's underneath that behavior? The behavior is the holes in the wall, but what's underneath is that not feeling safe.
yeah, and this kiddo has a short fuse, and but what I mean by that is that with executive function stuff, the impulsivity, this is highly impulsive, and that's part of executive function. So inhibition means holding back, right? So if I'm driving and I want to flip someone off, my inhibition is going to say, "Oh, okay, interesting thought, Seth, but don't do that," you know. So that's inhibition. Well, this kiddo's executive function to inhibit that isn't coming on, and the so the impulsivity, which is, to me is the opposite side of the coin of inhibition, is taking over, and it's just I have this impulse. This is what has to be done right now. I need to kick that wall. That's the only thing I can think of, where at least I'm not kicking person, but I got to get this energy out, and I got to try to communicate. Hey, I'm feeling unsafe here. I need something, and I don't know how to say it. You know, so but to understand that this child's nervous system, it um, has learned or built or developed these reactions to doing this. And it's not going to change overnight. And the nervous system can change and does change. So that's the really good news, is that in time, this kid's body can feel safer and safer and safer. So, and again, that's why I said, you know, with getting professionals, the sooner the better, involved who have studied for years on this stuff. Um, that's really what you want to do, is help get people who know what they're doing to help this kid's nervous system start to really change.
Thank you so much, Seth. And thank you, parents, all of you, for joining us today. This has been a really valuable conversation. I took lots of notes and really enjoyed listening from you, Seth. And honestly, your voice, Seth, is very soothing and calming. So, but that's the kind of voice you want to use when your kids are escalated and triggered. Use that soothing voice. And if you can't get that soothing voice, I like that five, the deep breaths. Do what you need to do to get yourself ready to give your kids your calm. Um, if you're watching this on the replay, just type in hashtag replay so we know you caught it later. If you have already registered for Seth's Summit, now do you call it TFOS?
TFOS, yeah.
TFOS.
The Executive Function Online Summit, TEFOS.
Okay, if you've already registered, type hashtag TEFOS in the comments so we know that you've already registered. And if you haven't registered yet, you're going to want to do that because this is an event you're not going to want to miss out on. Seth, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, parents, for being here.
Thanks, everybody, for being here.
Sending you lots of love. Okay, and the live stream has stopped, I believe. Yeah, I think so. Yep, good. Yay. That was awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. My brain's fried.
You did a great job. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Okay.
Breathe.
So I will continue promoting for your summit. And
Cool.
I've got a whole bunch of newsletters planned based on our conversation today, and I'll be advertising your summit in that as well.
Okay.
And I'll send you some forms to fill out for my 2 events that you've agreed to do. So thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
You're welcome. And I on the let me see if I can find this on the form I have, or on the document I
Mm-hmm.
updated it, and I'm going to give you that right now. I'll put it in the chat so you can take a you can kind of skim it because a lot of it you won't need to reread, but there's some new information. Like I changed the pricing.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
so just give that a look over.
Oh, my checklist. Okay. I did the Google form. I did the Thrive part. We did our interview already. There's a
You can
promotion
look at it
guide.
later.
Okay. So what do you want me to look at now? Anything?
No, nothing right now.
Okay.
Yeah, just go through it, and really the most important thing I think is just the details up until the number 4, your learning lab, because you already did yours.
Okay.
So just the pages 1, 2, and 3.
Okay. Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a beautiful day.
I'll see you on September 24th.
All right.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.